Hello, my name is Olivia Duffett, and I will be giving a brief overview of my poster titled Survey of Glass and Paint in the General Population to Assess Their Evidential Value. Glass and paint are two types of trace evidence that are common both in criminal activity and in everyday activities. In order to assess the significance of the glass and paint found on an individual suspected of a crime, the baseline frequency of occurrence of glass and paint in the everyday population must be assessed. Previous studies have been conducted in other areas, such as Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Northern Ireland, and the United Kingdom. However, the drastic variation in the results due to demographics and the experimental design show that the baseline studies need to be conducted regionally. Therefore, this study aims to use standardized protocols to provide useful background information stemming from Morgantown, West Virginia for the interpretation of paint and glass in forensic investigations. In this study, 100 individuals from Morgantown were sampled during the winter season on the 6 garment and footwear areas shown in Figure 1. The upper, lower, and footwear surface areas were sampled with tape lifts, while the soles of the footwear were sampled with a spatula and petri dish in a scraping motion. Once all the samples were collected, they were examined with various microscopic methods in a 3-step process to identify paint and glass residues. Then the fragments were removed from the tape lifts and cleaned. And finally, the glass fragments were analyzed via Grimm micro-XRF and/or SEM-EDS, while the paint particulates were analyzed via micro-FTIR and/or ATR techniques in order to classify the type of particulates. For example, paint can be classified as architectural or automotive, while glass can be classified as sheet, window, or container glass, providing valuable context in the assessment of the origin of a sample in a case. Figures 3 and 4 display paint particulates and glass fragments, respectively, that were recovered from the Morgantown winter sampling set. The majority of the residues were microscopic and smaller than 1 millimeter in size. In total, 511 garment and footwear areas were sampled from the 100 volunteers. On those areas, 13 glass fragments were recovered, with the majority of those fragments being located on the bottom of footwear, as shown in Figure 5. On the other hand, paint was more common, with 118 paint fragments recovered, the majority of which were located on the upper surface, shown in Figure 6. Overall, 10% of individuals had glass fragments, while 52% bore paint fragments, and 5% had both paint and glass. Out of all 511 garment and footwear areas sampled, 2% had glass, 14% had paint, and 0.2% had both paint and glass. Only 3 individuals had more than 1 glass fragment on them, as displayed in Figure 7. It was more common to find individuals with multiple paint fragments, as some individuals had up to 15. However, individuals were still more likely to have 1 or no paint particulates, which is displayed in Figure 8. For instrumental analysis on screen are the micro-XRF spectra for a recovered glass fragment and the FTIR spectra for a recovered paint particulate. Figure 9 displays the micro-XRF spectra for the glass fragment recovered, where the average of the 3 replicate measurements for the calcium-magnesium ratio and the calcium-iron ratio were used to classify this fragment as container glass. The recovered paint particulate was run via FTIR, and the spectra is displayed in Figure 10. The sample was classified as a blue architectural paint, specifically an alkyd binder with kaolin and titanium dioxide extenders. In conclusion, the study demonstrates that within the Morgantown area, 10% of volunteers had glass fragments, while 52% had paint particulates, and only 5% of individuals had both glass and paint traces. It is interesting to note that while most of the glass was found in the footwear bottom areas, this particular area contained the least amount of recovered paint particulates. The difference in sample recovery in garment area is an indication of the different mechanisms of transfer and persistence that may have been involved between different individuals and garment types. It was also more likely to find just 1 to no glass or paint fragment on individuals, and less likely to find individuals with multiple fragments. Overall, the results of this research are useful in determining the baseline for glass and paint particulates recovered from the general population and can then be compared to someone suspected of a crime to assess the significance of the evidence. In terms of furthering this research, the next steps are to collect samples from individuals during the summer months and from different locations and demographics to determine the effect of the garment type and garment area on the frequency of occurrence of glass and paint in the general population. I would like to thank Dr. Patrick Buzzini and Andra Lewis-Kirk from Sam Houston State University for their collaboration on this project. Also, a special thanks to the National Institute of Justice for funding this project. Thank you for visiting my poster.